These are my outdoor weather stations. This one here has a rain gauge, wind direction and wind speed, and it's a little bit too close to the house. But if we move further into the garden, this is my other weather station, and it's a solar powered weather station, and it's using a Raspberry Pi 3B with a Weather HAT, and the Weather HAT's using a BME280, and like the other one, it's measuring the rain with the rain gauge there, wind speed and wind direction. And at the moment it's raining, and we'll go and have a look inside to see what the measurements, because this weather station is transmitting the data to the home Wi-Fi by MQTT. This is the weather station in the backyard, and similar to the other ones, we've got a rain gauge, and we're measuring wind speed and wind direction. And the electronics, those outdoor sensors are connected via cable, and they're inside this Stevenson box. And we'll just have a quick look inside to see what's in here. And you can see that there's the Sparkfun Weatherbit, and it has a BME280, and it's connected also to the rain gauge here and to the wind speed and wind direction. And it's sending data via the serial port to a M5 stick C, which is also has an environmental hat measuring the temperature, humidity and pressure, and that's also going into the home Wi-Fi system. So here we have another copy of the Weather HAT, and it's on a Raspberry Pi 3B computer, and the Weather HAT here can connect to the rain and the wind transducers for wind direction and wind speed. Also has an LCD on board, and the one outside is currently in the rain collecting the data. We'll have a look at that data now. It's transmitting the data to a computer over here, which is a Windows PC, and it's only picking up the Raspberry Pi outside is running this Node-RED program, and it's connected to the MQTT server in the house. So our home server has an MQTT server, and here we're actually picking up the data from the weather station in the front and the back, and you can see the measurements over here. So we're getting temperature outside, the pressure, humidity, and that's all coming from the BME280, and it's got a light measurement, but at the moment the everything is in a weatherproof box, so the light sensor is only picking up the light inside the dark box. The wind speed and wind direction, and you'll notice there that we're getting the total rain. So it's beginning, while it's raining outside, we're actually getting some of those measurements. So in the back we're also getting the measurement of rain. That last parameter there is the rain, and we're getting the measurements from two sensors, weather sensors. The first set of three measurements are coming from an M5 stick C HAT, environmental HAT, and the other measurements are coming from the Sparkfun Weatherbit connected to a microbit computer. And while it's still raining, you can see that it's still collecting the data. So the data is still there. You can see the various columns in the MQTT message which has just been passed on. So comparing the measurements that I've collected with the new Raspberry Pi computer and the microbit with the Netanimo, you can see the forecast with Netanimo and with the measurements that have just been collected. So we're getting quite a lot of rain today. Total rain so far has been 12.4 millimeters, and that's compared to 12.7 forecasted. And we're currently in this period at the moment where it's collecting 2.3. And you can compare that with the measurements that we're getting from the Raspberry Pi. And these measurements here are all from the Raspberry Pi. And the measurements that I'm just opening up here, these are measurements that we're getting from the Sparkfun Weatherbit connected to a rain gauge.